Unbelievable. What a classic game this was. And I'm saying this in some seriousness and in some complete shock. Minnesota, to me, a guy who thought they would win, disappointed me. And I'm going to fully admit that I'm wrong, because that's what good people who cover this sport do. Admit when they're wrong. But I did say, like, in a certain sense, I was also right, because Minnesota proved that they could hang with the Buckeyes for almost 3 quarters. Minnesota here, they were a pretty one-dimensional offense, and only until the end did they really start to pass. And in the end, Tanner Morgan went 14-25, 205 for 1 touchdown. Muhammad Ibrahim had 30 carries, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Muhammad Ibrahim, was who carried that entire offense to stay with OSU. To be honest with you, he was on Ohio State's staff. He's their running back number 1, and they won't do their weird rotation if they had Muhammad Ibrahim. He's that good. And to preview what I'm going to say just a little bit about Ohio State later on in this video, he made your defensive line look like a papier-mâché roadblock. That was atrocious. Like, running up the middle, your defensive line, Haskell Garrett, like, I think that was he came in and scooped up the fumble for the touchdown. Your interior of your defensive line, I've concluded from that game, is definitely better than your edge rushers. By far. We'll get to some of that later, though. Minnesota here, basically for 2.5 quarters, was using Ohio State's undiscipline and youth to their advantage, and using their experience to continue doing the same thing that they had done all game, and just continuously run it up the middle, run it on the outside, occasionally pass just to keep Ohio State's defense honest. And the only reason they passed, like, for 205 yards was because Minnesota was running it so much, and Ohio State decided, okay, well, we're more talented than you, so we're just going to basically blitz you and put our corners on the island every single play so we can finally stop the run. And it worked. I mean, it allowed Minnesota to pass, but that was probably the more efficient, like, strategy, if I have to say so myself. Ohio State started off this game they were leading 10-0. They were very slow on their drives. You could tell that this team was shakier than usual, and that the coaching staff knew this coming into the game, that they knew. So it was a little slower. Ryan Day was fine with letting it be 10-0. And then Ohio State's defense is doing everything right. And Minnesota's offense is doing everything wrong. You know, the wildcat on the 3rd and 2. What are you, an idiot? Like, come on. Seriously? That blew my mind. A wildcat running it up the middle against Ohio State's defensive line. No. Just no. But after the 4th and 1, after, I believe, the Ohio State field goal, Minnesota's on a drive. They get stopped in their own territory. 4th and 1. And Muhammad Ibrahim, at this point, begins to tear through Ohio State's defensive line. He just does. And he gets a massive run into Minnesota territory, a little bit more run, some pass attempts, and finally Tanner Morgan throws to the end zone. The Texas A&M transfer catches the ball in the end zone, burns an Ohio State corner, which we've seen last year plenty of times, and it's 10-7. Minnesota has some momentum. Ohio State gets the ball back. Stroud just is really beginning to struggle. He throws a ball that was hard to catch. That's just from what I could tell. I was helping my dad with the car last night, so I didn't get to see the entirety of the first quarter or some parts of the second. But by the 3rd and 4th, I was very actively into this game. It seems from the highlight tape that he threw it hard, threw it a little too high, Guy failed to catch it, and it tipped right into Minnesota's hands. And I had Ohio State fans, like my friends, were telling me, like, no, this is not what we need. And indeed, it wasn't. Ohio State was shooting themselves in the foot this entire game, especially on defense. Earlier on offense, Minnesota gets the ball back, does what they normally do, and touchdown, 14-10. And the rest of the game's history. I want to get to, at this point, my concerns and my praises for Ohio State. We're talking about Ohio State here because they won the game. Minnesota, any Minnesota fans watching here, you worked as hard as you could and fell short. And Ohio State didn't work as hard as they could and fell and beat you by 14. And that's partially because I think that I probably thought Minnesota was better than they actually were. I didn't expect Morgan's passing to be so rare and also not like below average. Like, I didn't know they were not going to pass this much. And as one of the announcers said, I believe it was Joel Klatt, like, running that much kind of played into Ohio State's hands. And in a certain sense it did, but the only reason what prevented it from doing so in a certain sense was Ohio State's defensive mistakes and the fact that I actually thought Ohio State's defense was worse. I thought that Stroud would make like one or two more mistakes. I didn't think he would do so well in the second half, and that's partially because Minnesota's defense was absolute gutter trash. And Ohio State's running backs are better than I thought they would be, which probably plays into Minnesota's defense being far worse than I thought it would be. This game, in the end, it wasn't a blowout, but it wasn't close either. It was in that middle ground in the end. Minnesota, their team's prepared hard, and even if Ibrahim's like injured, this team will still get 7 or 8 regular season wins. If Ibrahim's healthy, I could actually see this team still getting 9 wins, maybe 10, which I wouldn't have said before, and that's when I thought Minnesota was good. But they played their hearts out. They have drive. They want to row the boat, and they're not going to give up either. This team is going to take out this loss on another good team in Minnesota. So good job by PJ Fleck. Really good job by Ryan Day too. I can't say that Ryan Day necessarily outcoached Fleck, because looking at this game and how long Minnesota led, I'd say it was more so at some point the talent dam is going to open, and that's when Trayvon Henderson had his only reception of the night, and it was a touchdown. Same with Chris Olave. The talent margin is just too wide. I'd say the two coaches actually coached a pretty equal game, but Ohio, this is where recruiting and talent is important. This is why you recruit well. This is why recruiting is viewed as so valuable. And like, people are like, well, recruiting doesn't matter that much because look at Michigan and look what Mark D'Antonio did at MSU. It's like, guys, this game is literally why talent matters. This is why you have to recruit well and why you have to have the superior facilities. Because if Ohio State, for example, had less talent, the game would be even. Ohio State's talent, and specifically I'd say Ryan Day or Kevin Wilson's coaching, won this game. The defense, whole different animal. But that's basically the game's summary, in my opinion. Stroud passed for 13 for 22, 294 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. If you want to believe like the 222 QB rating numbers are, and I've praised QB ratings before, but as someone who can watch this game, I can officially criticize this and say that was his receivers making the game, and Henderson. That was not him. That wasn't him. Completely wasn't him. That was a combination of Minnesota's defense putting one defensive back on Chris Olave, which is just asinine. It's horribly asinine. Any Ohio State fan would tell you that they wouldn't even want their own defensive back one-on-one against Chris Olave. That's just asinine. That was bad. Stroud, definitely, though, despite the fact I was just saying his QB rating, how good he looked at the end was definitely a mirage. He did improve because he finally tried to, he completed passes, played more to his own system, played to what was available rather than just kind of aimlessly throwing it in tight spots. He did improve in the second half. So now on to some positives and concerns for Ohio State. And this is going to be very somewhat brief. The positives are your running backs, wide receivers, O-line, almost the entire offense. Mayan Williams rounded up to 14 yards a carry. Remember when I told you Mark Ingram body? Dude, that dude's small. He's big. He's hard to tackle. Teague is big. He's easy. Teague is far easier to tackle than Williams or Henderson. And that performance, that game by Teague, and how he wasn't played much, or maybe even at all in the second half, I expect Teague to be reduced to a backup role here. I fully expect that. The carries are mainly going to be between Williams and Henderson. I think this game has not assisted Teague in his starting spot safety. He's no longer going to be a starter for the rest of the year, in my opinion. But that's a strength for the running back room because Teague is still a pretty good running back, at least in power situations. Henderson is really explosive, fast, kind of reminds me of like a running back who, like, you know what, Mike Leach said that he wanted for Mississippi State running backs to be great receivers. Henderson reminds me of that right now. Henderson would be his speed, at least, his speed, acceleration, everything. He's a great speed running back. He might not be like the same build as Williams. I think Williams is a year on him. He might not be as like good as at power as Williams is in a certain sense. I don't know. I didn't really see any of them in power situations. Maybe I am not like the best at talking about that here. But Henderson's really good. Henderson's going to be one of the best running backs in history by the time that he graduates. Williams might be too. I mean, Mark Ingram certainly was. Williams could be. So again, running backs, almost the entire offensive line minus the quarterback. We'll touch on that just a little bit. Ryan Day's coaching, amazing second half adjustments. That's all I have to say. There's nothing more to say. 10 points in the first half, 35 in the second. That's it. Concerns? The entire defense. Less so the defensive line. The defensive line, again, looking at this game, the defensive line was the better part of this team. And I don't want to dive into defensive coaching. Part of me wants to blame Kerry Combs for this defense because he took over last year. Some stuff happened, like defense wasn't as good last year, especially the secondary defensive backs, which I think he might have been like coaching. And defense is just the defense was not good at all. You allowed basically a one-dimensional offense to stick with you for nearly 3 quarters. Great job, Kerry Combs. You deserve a pat on the back. Your defensive line, the entire team deserves a participation award for letting Ohio State's offense win this game. But in all seriousness, this defense, especially I expect the line to improve because Larry Johnson is a great coach. I don't know as much about Kerry Combs, but Larry Johnson's an elite position coach. This line will improve. Linebackers, like the rest of the defense outside of the D-line, there should be some concern for because I don't think either of the coaches for any of those positions is as good as Johnson. And basically, that's really all I have to say. The discipline was pretty atrocious too. I mean, missed targeting, penalties that kept Minnesota in the game, like the roughing the passer, that was controversial, but the several pass interference calls, that's just bad. And that's along with the youth, and it's only week 1. So that should improve somewhat, but still a concern to look at looking forward. And lastly, before I end, CJ Stroud is a question mark, and that's a concern. He wasn't bad. He was bad in the first half, improved in the second. He obviously has the wide receiver talent and the offensive line talent to, like, the offensive line protected him really well. Receivers are obviously really good, same with running backs. But the question is, let's make Ohio State Nation mad right now and hypothesize that my Michigan Wolverines have an elite top 5 defense all around. CJ Stroud in his current form would not survive a top 5 defense. He wouldn't. His running backs may keep him in the game as wide receivers would, but this kid made enough bad throws and mistakes last night. You put him against a top 5 defense, and Michigan will likely not have a top 5 defense. I've praised their defense before, think it's going to be great. Top 5 is a stretch. This team needs to improve. Stroud needs to improve if Ohio State wants to win the national title or even win a playoff game. That's all I have to say for today. If you like this video, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. What do you think about this game? Do you think there's more positives or more concerns than what I said? What do you think of Ohio State's record moving forward, and what do you think of Minnesota moving forward? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.